All right, welcome back everyone. Moving on to the next session, safeguarding data in a digital era, navigating privacy and compliance challenges. Data protection is more critical than ever, and we are thrilled to have a team of experts who will walk us through the latest trends in privacy and compliance. Please join me in welcoming our moderator, Ralph Kaser.
No, he's absent. I'm replacing him today.
Oh, you're replacing him. Oh, it's good to have you back on stage. Okay, we'll have Sally S-Flifel, Corporate and Commercial Projects Lawyer, UAE. Eslam Mezar, Data Privacy and IT Lawyer, Hemo Data, UAE. Nikhil Solanki, Group Legal Counsel and Data Protection Officer, Lulu Group International, UAE, and Mohamed Afir, Managing Partner, Maghreb Legal and Compliance, Morocco. And Afir, you'll be the moderator as well?
Great. I know that after the lunch, it wasn't easy, yeah? Isn't it? Who was first? That was Sarah, I think, was the lady from India. Good. I think I have already introduced myself earlier. My name is Mohamed Afir. I'm coming from Morocco, representing the North Africa markets, Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia. We do legal, but also compliance. What I'm talking about that is that the topic that we will be addressing in a few minutes with this bright bright panelists we have today is also about safeguarding data and data privacy, actually. And for those who practice compliance, I'm sure you know that it's part of data privacy is also part of the compliance programs that companies and law firms do usually implement here and there. A couple of weeks ago, I have started an assignment with a pharmaceutical company. And during the first discussions, pure question to the CEO, what kind of information do you gather? And guess what was the answer? Everything we can. Everything we can collect, we get it from customers. In the pharma industry, as you know, the pharmaceutical companies are not allowed to gather patient data, except for sometimes what we call pharmacovigilance. And then I followed, where do you store this data? He said, in just computers, sometimes files, sometimes we just, when we do the visit with professionals, we take notes and we store it. The fact is that sometimes employees leave and we don't find the paperwork. Fine, okay. We will have a lot of work. And I'm sure the panelists will share many of their insights and knowledge about that. The panelists of today, and I'll of course give the floor for that to them to introduce themselves, are coming also from the in-house practice. So I'm sure you guys can bring a lot of insights and practical insights and advices here and there. Yeah. Ladies first. Sally, please.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sally S-Flifel, and I'm a UK qualified lawyer, been in the region now for 11 years. I come from an in-house background where I worked with Moderator, Abu Dhabi holding company, and I'm now working for Aspen Legal Consultancy. My current role at the moment, even though I'm a corporate commercial lawyer, I find that a lot of my clients at the moment are focusing on data protection and compliance, and that is my main area of focus. We have advised companies in California and the EU, where the GDPR plays a major role in data protection and compliance. Well, the two really go hand in hand. And I'll be answering your questions on data privacy.
Yeah. Thank you all for being here. We know that we are more than 2 hours late, but again, thanks for being here. It's not in our hand, as you all know. My name is Islam Mizar. I'm a data privacy and information technology lawyer. I work for Hemo Data. Hemo Data is a technology consultancy and data management consultancy firm. I started my career as a lawyer since more than 10 years now, but I was practicing all the cases that we already know, but it started with me when I face a cybercrime. In that time, I face, okay, there is another dimension that I need to work and look into. So I start my searching and know more about data privacy. And now with more than 6 years of experience in data privacy, I'm happy to be here and supporting all of my colleagues and all of our clients in GCC. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nikhil Solanki. I'm the legal counsel and the data protection officer of Lulu Group International. Our company recently went public in one of UAE's biggest IPOs last year. I'm also a certified privacy manager by IAPP. So my work involves, I'm an in-house counsel, so my work involves looking into the day-to-day legal tasks and also guiding the business in terms of privacy obligations and compliance. Yeah.
I told you, bright panelists with in-house practice, so they know what it means about safeguarding data. Sally, what do you think about, what are your thoughts about how important is safeguarding data, whatever customers, passions or whatever? How much is it important for either the, that's of course obvious question and obvious answers, but I have started presenting the case of my client who did not really see the importance of the audit of data privacy while he's managing sensitive data. Maybe you can comment on this and share your insights.
First of all, the UAE has actually only just published its data protection laws in 2021. We're yet to receive the executive regulations on how the enforcement regulations are going to work and how the enforcement body is actually going to be regulated and how they themselves can regulate companies who haven't complied with the data protection legislation or what they can do to comply with the data protection. First of all, I think most of the companies worldwide often just oversee and underestimate data. In this challenging market that we are at the moment with technology, we having vast amounts of data from personal data or what can be deemed as personal data or general data. The UAE law itself makes a specific categorization for personal data, and it actually applies to generated data. So from my perspective, my advice always is use a common sense approach. You are getting data from here, there, and everywhere. You need to know where you're storing that data, how you're storing that data, have you got permission to use that data? And lastly, and most importantly, you've got to anonymize this data. You've got healthcare legislation, you've got banking legislation, which is completely different than the federal law, though it is actually answerable to the Federation. But you've got to always say, okay, I'm using this data. Have I got permission to use this data? And will I have consent to use this data? And use it for that purpose, which is the most important. I was working with a client recently who is a well-known real estate company owned by one of the sheikhs in Abu Dhabi. And they said, great, we've got data from something that we advertised in real estate properties. Were they interested? I'm going to use this data for marketing purposes. I said, well, you can't really do that. If someone's asked you, yes, I'm interested in plot 76 on Reem Island, doesn't mean that they'll be interested in using data for a supermarket on Reem Island. So you first got to think, am I going to use that data for what its purpose? Have I got consent to use that data? And where am I going to store that data? So I think having a strict compliance, rigorous internal policy, employing people who know what they're doing in terms of data, and actually having a compliance program and a corporate governance structure to say, you think it's just data, numbers and lines, when in actual fact, it's not. So that would be my first port of call, if that answers your question.
Yeah, of course. And the floor is open for everyone. Gentlemen?
Okay. Mainly, in the first place, I want to make sure that every one of us now in the same place, in the same ground. The data is already protected since the last century. But what is the new approach since the GDPR in 2016 is mainly the 5 concepts. The GDPR already defined the data controller, the data processor, the processing activities, the data subject, and the DBO. So mainly the data protection laws working around those 5 concepts. The data controller, he is the one who decide what kind of data we should collect, even he collected himself or by a processor, or what kind of data is going to be under processing in general. The data processor is working under the supervision of data controller. So every contract we have, you may have a controller to controller, controller to processor, processor to processor, or processor to controller. So in the first place, as a DBO, as a legal counsel, you should define the parties in the first place to know what kind of obligations under every one of them, who is going to make what, and who is going to report to the regulatory authority. So this is the first part. What is the processing activities in the first place? What considered as a personal data and what is not? With personal data is every single data can identify someone by directly or indirectly. I can say Islam. Okay, it's a direct data that can identify me. I can say my street. I can say my street number, my address, my IP address, my digital fingerprint, whatever can identify an individual is a personal data. Who is the data subject? Me. The one that you can identify him by the data. Who is the DBO? The one who should be the responsible in every entity to be responsible to make all the controls live and working, controls and data protection laws. So when you define all the parties, you should identify also the jurisdiction, because in UAE we may have the federal law, as you mentioned, Sally, but we also have the DFC data protection law, the ADGM data protection regulation. We have in Saudi Arabia the new PDPL. We have in every single country in GCC its own PDPL. We are not like Europe. They have only GDPR, but in here you have in one country you may face 3 different data protection law. So mainly my approach to any new vendor, any new challenge, define the parties, define the obligations, know your position as a controller or a processor or only reseller, that you are not going to process or control anything. So you have no obligations in that time. So when you evaluate, you know your position, and after that you should continue.
Thank you, Islam. And let me come back to one point. I mean, you've said so many bright things, and I will address it also to Nikhil, which is in a group like Lulu, yeah?
Yeah.
I pronounce it correctly, yeah?
Yeah. Lulu.
If I do it in French, I will say Lulu. You know, when you have an organization with tentacular presence here and there in different jurisdictions, and I guess you guys deal with some clients present here and there, how do we manage different legislations here and there? A DPO like you, Nikhil, you're somehow first responsible or second responsible or third responsible, whatever, depends on the cases. How organizations probably like Lulu deal with that kind of matters, knowing that they open a store here or they open an entity somewhere else. Even in the UAE, I understand that there are different approaches, yeah, depending on the state, yeah. So what do you think about that, Nikhil? We are not breaching any confidentiality of Lulu, of course. And
That's a very good question. And that's a challenge that we are addressing every day. So there's a concept called rationalizing requirements. When you have multiple legislations involved, you take the common elements of it and you address the highest benchmark of it. So that's rationalizing requirements. And we know personal data protection laws are based out of GDPR, which is sort of serves the benchmark, and we have precedents of it. So the legal department, including myself as the DPO, we are very well versed with these precedents, these laws. And what we do is we've made a policy at the group level, which we are then churning it down to department level guidelines. And then we are just training repeatedly again and again. So that's not enough. After that, we do audits as well. So when we train, we make sure we do some kind of quizzes so that the information is retained at the functional level. And then there is audit to understand what is right or wrong. So at various local levels, at various demographies, we do this in Saudi, we do this in Oman, we do this in UAE, and we ensure that privacy obligations are met with. At the same time, we are using privacy enhancing tools. We are looking to deploy a security AI. Right now, we are using OneTrust, but we are not really happy with that. So security.ai, we are looking into. We think it's much better. So yeah, at the organizational level, we are using organizational measures like policies and procedures and training, audit. And at the technological level, we are using privacy enhancing technologies across multiple demographics.
So somehow it's a compliant process that you put in place, which is somehow general, that adapts to the different jurisdictions and legislations,
Yes.
right? A
Yes.
harmonized process. And then you customize depending on the country or the place you're
Yes,
going.
yes.
Yeah? Yeah.
So where the difference, where we note the differences lie, we try to slightly modify the approach and policy and training in that particular country. But we have a generic training content. So 80-20 rule. So 80% generic and 20% we tweak it, and we engage the stakeholders and the champions and we train them.
Yeah. Remaining in the same aspect, which is safeguarding data, of course, there is the technical side of it, and Islam was talking about it earlier when we had a brief chat outside about that. We also have the role of the DPO. Sometimes it's externalized, sometimes it's an external law firm who does that, or sometimes you have the DPO inside and has a liability for that.
Of course.
Yeah, it's a liability. And jurisdictions from here and there, some can bring some huge liability to the DPO. Some others just say, no, he's just an employee. He has no liability. We see it when I compare Morocco to Algeria. Morocco has started soft and Morocco has started hard, and Algeria has started hard. And it's a real challenge for advisors, real challenge. Sally, what's you as an advisor? What do you see as real challenges when you talk to your customers? What do you notice from the very beginning, probably until the end?
Okay, sorry, if you can just give me a bit more information on,
on
what perspective.
when you talk to customers who knock on your door, I guess each and every customer has his own concerns. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What are usually the most common concerns when it gets to data privacy? You talked about sharing data or collecting data and use it for other purposes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, this is one of the common mistakes, of course. Yeah. But when they come and knock your door, what are the things that they usually address with you, or you identify as core, core things that have been missed or violating?
Okay, I'm just going to elaborate on what Islam was talking about in terms of personal data and data controller and data processor. You'll hear those terms quite flippantly throughout instructions that you get from your clients, talking from an in-house or a consultancy basis. Often people say, oh, data protection, we've got that covered. We don't really need to know about that. Let's focus on compliance. But they often forget the two are actually work together hand in hand.
Absolutely.
If you're not compliant with your data protection, then you're not compliant as an organization. In terms of what can they do or what clients can do is actually, again, implement policies that do give you either the two-tier security to protect your data. Where is that database? Is it based inside the country or is it based outside the country? Or do you store it on a cloud, which no one knows where it is? First of all, you've also got to look at cross-border transactions. For example, in China, you cannot use Chinese data and take it outside of the country, regardless of what that data is. There was a case, I think it was Starmer in 1999, maybe 2019, possibly, sorry, 2019, where it was cross-border transactions between the EU and the US. And that actually went to court and they said, you can't take EU data to the States. And they said, no, but we've got policies in place which allow us to do that. But the judge actually ruled and said, no, regardless of what your regulatory requirements are, you've got to have the customer's consent to do that. Now, in the UAE, you can have cross-border transactions, provided you have the data subject's consent. If you're the data controller or the data processor, you've got to identify what your role is. And again, you have the healthcare law in the UAE, which allows you to export that data elsewhere with the patient's consent, and same for banking regulations, which is anti-money laundering legislation. Again, you can transfer that data. But it's also very important to say, you may have data covered, but have you really got that covered? What have you got in place? Have you got a DPO in place? Are you a private entity or are you a government entity? The UAE is actually going to exempt government entities in the interests of, is it a public interest or is it not a public interest? Which, you're going to have to explain, was it legitimate or was it not legitimate? So these are the aspects that you'll have to consider, and you'll have to consider to be transparent. Have you got consent? And make sure it's generalized data, but you know what you're holding and where you're holding it. So I would often advise that make sure, and the data protection regulations are very, very clear. And like I said, it's a common sense approach. And if you're unsure and you don't have something like that in place already, have a look what the GDPR says and just kind of mirror it and show the authorities that we are doing our best and we are going to mirror something that we already have in place and we are protecting the data.
Great. Thank you. Islam, what do you think about that?
I wasn't planning to...
You're a very tech-oriented person and details-oriented as well. I've noticed that during the discussions we had.
I wasn't planning to start with this, but it's not only challenging for the consultants or for the DBOs, but mainly the main penalties in GDPR is 20 million or 4% of the annual revenue. Yeah. But in here, it can be a jail time. It can be a prison time. In Saudi Arabia, it can be a prison time. In Egypt, it can be a prison time. For DBO, for the CEO, for any stakeholders that not complying with data protection laws.
Many are going through that, huh? Many countries are adopting that.
Yeah, of course. In Egypt, in Saudi Arabia, and etc. It's common here to have non-compliance. You will face a prison time. It's not a game anymore. So when you talk to a customer and he don't know till now what is the name of what is the meaning of personal data, it's challenging. What is the difference between personal data and sensitive data? Because sensitive data have more protection than the personal data. It's challenging. When you do not have the consent management in place, it's challenging. The data transfer itself, it's challenging. And you can mention the data transfer. It's more easier when it's the same entity like Lulu Supermarket, because you can depend on common bending rules. You can depend on, you already have that in place. But in regard to work with different entities, it's going to be really challenging. So I can do exercise now. Anyone can open, please, Google Maps. Yeah.
Guys, requests from one of the panelists.
Can anyone
Google Map?
Yeah, just Google Map. Yeah, and put any points that you attend, you want to go there, and you should see now the options for you. Okay, you will face the last option is if you need the first option is if you want to go with car, with public transportation. After that, walking, and by Careem. And if you order Careem now, you will have the options to have a car from Careem or a car from Dubai Taxi. So, as a consumer, as a regular consumer, okay, it's good. It's a good feature for me. But as a data privacy lawyer, you shouldn't think like that. You share your data mainly with Google, and Google share your data with Careem. Kareem shared your data with their mother entity, Uber. And Uber share your data with Dubai Taxi, that owned by the government. So you have a lot of agreements, you have a lot of consent management, you have a lot of terms and conditions that you already say yes to it. So it's not an easy work by the end of the day. You should again know your situation. Where is your situation regarding all of those 5 or 6 contracts? Where is your data? Because now you shared your data with servers and maybe in US, maybe in EU, and also in UAE. And if you are going as a data subject, if you are going to exercise one of your rights according to the law, how you will do that? And from technical perspective, in those 4 entities, how they can make you do your exercise, make you did your exercise and exercise your data subject rights. I want my data. I want to know exactly what kind of personal data you collect from me. I want to know who is the parties that you already shared my data with. I want you to delete my data. Where is your data in the first place? So it's a challenge for you as a data privacy consultant to give them the consultation, to be a part of this process, to be a DBO that you work inside every single company of them, to organize with the other companies, to see the paperwork, to see the technical implementation in place. Yeah, it's really challenging.
Thank you. And I would like to ask one question to Nikhil as well, but I will come to that one regarding the employees' data and the awareness of employees within an organization. But I would like to start with another one, which is about third party. The third party who do collect data, some organizations sometimes, or most of the time, give it to third party based in some countries. Yeah. What do you think such third parties collecting or storing or managing or transferring should do, basically, and how the companies who are clients basically should do as well to deal with these third parties?
Interesting question. So there are 2 things involved here. One is vendor management, and the second is cross-border transactions. So when you engage with vendors, you need to have a very robust compliance checklist. There's that term again. But you need to have a set of questions that you should ask your vendors, and there should be a certain benchmark below which you will not entertain vendors. For example, you can have ISO certifications, you can have SOC 2 certifications mandatory before you engage with them. And then with regards to cross-border transfers, the situation becomes very complex. So to give you an example, when the company's internal IT department decides to partner with a vendor, not necessarily they will engage with the legal or the DP or the compliance. They will just, okay, you are the best one, let's go with you. We need a small software update or a system test. So they select the vendor, they use another server which is located in another country. So the very act of copying the data from their system, company system to another server, it might be test data. But the very fact that personal data is copied from one server to another server located in a different country, that's a cross-border transfer. So that attracts various obligations. Then when the vendor accesses it from another country, that's again a cross-border transfer. And then the vendor might have employees working remotely from another country. So then, you see how it keeps getting added. So the best approach is to safeguard it with either SECs, as Islam pointed out, or and have robust privacy notices. So when you collect consumer data, you tell them exactly who it is shared with, for what purpose it is being shared with, and also have your regular cybersecurity, measures. So, yeah, that's quite a bit,
Yeah, and it's not an easy exercise actually, especially when you know that you sometimes hire a third party, and depending on the organization, some organizations just address a questionnaire, and the questionnaire can be freely filled in by whatever the information can be, and then the DPO or the legal counsel or whatever doesn't have time to go into all the details, and then there is a kind of commitment behind. Let's say, I certify the information I have provided is enough. And then when there is a government audit or an authorization to be requested, and then how much the organization can be liable on behalf of the third party that they hired, which is not an easy topic basically for the organization.
Yeah. So when a vendor has been engaged, it's usually in the capacity of a processor. So there the liability is kind of limited. The ultimate liability is on the controller. So that's the reason why we need to have a very robust. In fact, you need to contractually obligate the vendor into allowing you to enter their premises and doing an audit. I mean, it's a standard requirement nowadays. So you're very well protected. And yeah, the fines are huge, so, and there's a lot at stake. So yeah, and also in 2024, one of the biggest reasons for breach was negligence on the part of vendors. Yeah, so it was, I forget the study, but amongst the top three reasons for breach, one of them was poor vendor management.
Yeah. Question for the three of you, and whoever feels it, let's go. How should businesses, I mean organizations here and there, approach data breach and the readiness to respond to it? Technically, theoretically, or from an organization point of view? You know, I'm sure some people of you know what the ISO 9001, 9001 in terms of quality standards addresses from time to time is about, you know, management is one of the important pillars when an auditor goes and checks an organization, and the management plays a core role within an organization to ensure that, including data breach, and how to respond to that in case of this happens.
How should organizations approach data breach? At the high level, the approach should be proactive and not reactive. Easier said than done. But what does a proactive approach mean? It means you need to have an incident plan, a response plan. You need to assign individuals correct roles and responsibilities, individuals from legal, a couple of individuals from IT, from compliance, from marketing. These individuals should know their functions and roles in case of a breach. You need to train them, and you need to do tabletop exercises. Correct. So preparation, proactive approach, and the senior leadership should be involved as well.
Yeah.
So we have under regulation, we need to inform the regulators within 72 hours, right? And that's a very small window. So you need to get a lot of things done. You need to do your initial hypothesis, what went wrong. Was it a third-party mistake? Was it an employee's mistake? You need to do an internal investigation. Then you do an external investigation. You compile the findings of this report. You take the legal's opinion. You take the marketing opinion, and then decide whether to actually notify the regulators or not. Decide whether to notify the data subjects or not. So all of this should be planned out proactively.
Yeah, thank you. You've said one word, and I have seen Islam doing notification.
Because it's in order to notify the regulator or data subject. I don't think it's mainly depending on our opinion. It's mainly depending on the situation itself.
Yes.
Yeah, when you face a situation, you have no other choice to notify or not. If you're facing now an incident and it's gonna reflect the data subject rights, you should notify. You must notify the data subject, and you should notify the regulatory authority itself, and you should tell them in your report or in your first report what happened who is the one who discovered that, and what is the technical measures that you already taken place to mitigate the risk, what is the potential risks, and again, in the same time, you should notify the data subject to tell him what happened and how that breach can affect their data subject, their data rights and their own privacy rights, and how they can mitigate that. Let's take an example: if you face a data breach and a lot of credit cards numbers already live now, and this is that's the kind of breach that you're already facing. You should notify them that your financial data already breached, and we need you to make sure that change your passwords. Do not give any kind of information by phone or WhatsApp. Do not act with any any act. Do not give any act to any other people, because we as a bank, we are not going to ask you for personal information by phone or by email or by WhatsApp or whatever. So you should notify. Maybe you can discuss with your teams regarding putting the policy in place in the first place, and also regarding reporting to the public. But regarding the obligations under the law, notifying the data, the data privacy or data protection authority, notifying the data subject, it's not a choice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've got an example for a couple of weeks ago where I have made an offer to a client regarding a data privacy assessment and an implementation program. This was coming basically from the global group, from the global team, and top down. And to the local organization, when I've met with the client, he said, Mohamed, please let us finish this operation very, very quickly, because, I have operations to fill in. I don't care about this data privacy work, and I don't like your offer. Basically, it's a cost for me. So there are sometimes we face some reluctancy from clients here and there who don't see the value of it, don't see the value of investing on it. Because, of course, data privacy advisors are not probably the cheapest advice all over the market sometimes, which we understand. It's an expertise. Yeah, it needs to be correctly paid. So in these kind of challenges for the lawyers, it's not always easy to convince or to get the client on board. They don't think like that. Sally, what do you think about all these kind of challenges, all this kind of sometimes the lack of understanding of a client, and how would you react on you are too high in terms of fees? I know you're high.
I wish. Interesting question, because in this, like you say, AI tools, artificial intelligence, everything is technology driven, everything is machine driven. How I would actually think that it's difficult to say, because everything that you input the data, because it's going to be generated data, it's going to be machinery driven data. So you'll see, for example, when you click on a link and you see a privacy notice and it says accept or do not accept, and you'll just hit accept because you want to get to the next page. But if you hit I don't accept, it's not going to take you onto the next page. So often we were talking about breaches and how easily it can be done. Everyone's human, everyone makes mistakes. I don't believe artificial intelligence is good as a human being. It's absolutely not. I'm very old school in that sense. But breaches can happen, and companies do need to think ahead of, okay, if I do breach, like Islam said, you've got hefty fines here, the penalties are high. In the GDPR in Europe, it's absolutely a fine. Here it's a prison sentence. So I would definitely say to companies, you may not think about it right now, but go away, sleep on it, and see if you are going to be generating data and how important that data is. Can your company cannot function without this data? And you have to implement policies to have rigorous policies. Now we're going into an era where there's AI. Governments are going to be heavily regulating data. So in the sense that it comes part of your routine to think about that data. So companies are going to have to think about how they're going to implement that data. It may be costly in the beginning, but it's going to save you long term. You may want to do that now, you may want to do it later, but then if you go to do it later, then you'll have to bear the consequences. So I'd say as early on as you can think about it, make it part of your business plan and make sure you do it, because if you don't, then you will suffer later. And it's easily done. And it's not that difficult if you read the regulations and you employ the right people or you get the right resources in. It's very easy at the beginning.
Thank you, Sally. Nikhil, what?
Yes.
Back
How
to
do you change the mindset of clients into being more proactive? If I got the question
Somehow,
right.
yeah.
How do you
react into this is too high, this is a waste of money, why should I do it now? Maybe later, I don't need it on, okay, do your job, but only for 2 hours and that's done. Please send me a good and nice report from my CEO, things like that.
It seems that you've been facing a lot of these.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So that's a very common approach, not just by clients, but by leadership across the world. So one of the things that is highly advised within the privacy community is to highlight the risks. There are so many judgments and precedents where companies are fined hundreds of millions. Amazon was fined 800 million euros for data breach using personal data without their consent, basically. There was DD Global that was fined 1.2 billion US dollars. And the list goes on. I mean, there are hundreds of such precedents. So highlight the risk, not just monetary risk. There is a loss of brand image, loss of customer trust, loss of business, loss of reputation, and loss of market valuation. When you scare your clients or the leadership, then the message becomes very clear. Look, the laws are being followed, and for the people who are not being, for the companies that are not following the laws, this is the consequence. So you choose compliance or you choose non-compliance. There's going to be cost either way. So that's, I think that's a very straightforward approach you can have there.
Yeah, true. And what about the employees or third parties? From time to time, law firms are required to train, for example. Yeah. How does this extend to employees? How does this extend to third parties? How does this extend to management as well?
So privacy obligations or privacy compliance obligations, when you select champions, meaning when you select representatives in different departments who will make sure that privacy obligations are complied with in that specific function, they see it as an additional workload at the end of the day. So the challenge is, how do you ensure that they follow through these additional work points? So that's one challenge. You communicate regularly, you train them regularly, you tell them what is the consequence. That's one. I think more than that, we are moving to a technologically, accelerated operations where there will be automated workflows. So I see in the future, most of these workloads will be taken off from these champions and automated. So there are already tools like Security AI who's significantly helping in this area, but not 100%. You need humans. So yeah, that's my answer.
Sally?
I think also employees, most of the departments that you come across, certainly in-house, for example, procurement, finance, these regulations don't apply to me, or we don't really handle data. But if you go beyond the first level of data, you do, for example, HR, you've got employee data, you've got their medical records, you're doing their visas, you're doing the health checks, you've got access to all their sensitive data. So HR definitely will be a data controller, if not a data processor. You've got finance. Well, you've got banking details for paying employee salaries. Again, that's data, and that's personalized data. So every department will have or access or come into contact with some kind of data from every single employee. And the one that's heavily burdened is obviously procurement. Yeah. Procurement, because they're dealing with suppliers. They've got inundated with data from all over the show. So for them, it's absolutely critical that they have such policies in place, and those are then replicated to their suppliers. So you may not think, I don't have data, I don't need it, but you will need it. And everybody uses it regardless, even when you walk into a store and the first thing they ask you, can we have your mobile, madam? What do you need my mobile for? Again, it's marketing material, and that mobile number is specific for you. So that actually can then be identified. Oh, this is Sally's number, or this is Mohamed's number. So in every day you're facing data, and it's quite hard to keep track of where that data's going or where it's going. But you've just got to bear in mind, do I really want this company to use my data? Are they going to sell it on? The government recently just set out a memorandum not so long ago, I think it was in July, where everyone was getting cold calling. Oh, can you invest on the stocks? Or come and do this course for free. And that's when they've now put out, okay, if you receive a call, you know it's from Unique Communications, or you know it's from Lulu. And that was basically to stop the cold calling. And people would just buy that data from any other company, whether it's under the table or as a pure honest transaction. So again, it's actually driving down, right, I'm going to use this data for this specific purpose. So just bear in mind next time you think about it, right, do I really want this company to use my data? If I don't, just simply say no and don't feel pressurized to give that data.
That was a testimony from a previous in-house counsel who knows the different departments and the different ins and outs of that.
Certainly helps. It does definitely help.
Yeah. Last but not least, Islam, maybe you can share with us your, let's say, as a third-party advisor, your top 3 or top 5 advices, main advices when it comes to safeguarding data in an organization or to your client. Yeah, the main takeaways after a long meeting, and then you say, okay, you know what, you're my customer, I like you, I'd like to share with you 3 thoughts. Think about it and come back with an implementation, or I can help you to do that. What will be the top 3?
First of all, when you talk to a client and you evaluate his situation regarding data privacy, even if he have already policies in place and you are going to help him update it, or he didn't have any kind of policies and you will help him draft it from in the first place. But mainly, you need to have a record of processing activities. Every single department in the company should have a record of processing activities. To know, it's a kind of data mapping, to know where is your data, where is it, where is the client's data, where is the employee's data, and from where you collect the data and where you store it. So in the first place, you should have a record of processing activities, and I will take it from Sally, the transparency. Because one of the biggest fines that we heard about, it's from H&M, when they process the personal data for the employees in a different way. You expect your company to process your data in order to provide you insurance services or whatever. But when you notice as an employee that your company process your data and they evaluate you in order to your age and your health history, and regarding your wife health history, it's not fair. It's not, and you didn't tell your employee about that. So it's a matter of transparency, and they evaluate the employees in order to see the real cost of every employee, and if they are going to renew the contract with them or not. And also, one of the biggest car companies in US, they facing a very huge fine, and it's just last week, because they mainly share the behavior of the drivers and the car owners with the insurance company. So let's assume I'm going under 60 per hour. You will unlikely have an accident in that year. So okay, he is good, guys. Give him a very good
reward.
Yeah, no, not a reward, but to give him the regular package of insurance in his car. But if he is a fast driver and they mainly collect that data from his car and share it with the insurance companies, no, he is driving fast. Do not give him something like make the insurance for 10,000 per year. And it's really happened. So be transparent for your employees' data, peer and transparent for your customers' data, and last but not least, be compliant or do not handle personal data in the first place, if you can.
All right, thank you. I've talked about reward because I have seen, I don't know whether this is a good practice or not, but I have seen an organization who gives a final bonus, a yearly bonus to those who, they put a tracker in the cars, you know, the employees' cars, and they have on the tracker, of course, they did not disclose anything about that, neither to the government nor to the employees, of course, and they give a bonus to the good drivers, actually. Oh wow. No, great. Top 3, Nikhil? Top 3 recommendation in-house?
It's pretty standard. Be proactive, not reactive. The work is quite a bit. There was a study conducted by ISACA a week ago, and they said out of the 1,600 people that they surveyed, 63% of privacy professionals were stressed out compared to previous 5 years of their experience. And the reason that they gave for this stressful work was multiple regulations and being understaffed. So my second advice is to allocate resources in terms of human resources and technical resources.
And as you said it right, you don't specifically need to hire. Sometimes
Yes.
you put champions in.
Yes. So be proactive, allocate resources, and I think these two are enough. Yeah.
It's already a lot of work already. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sally, any thoughts about that? Any final recommendation around that?
No, I think that covers it all. It's just, as we say, if you're under 500 employees, you can implement something fairly simple and very easily compliant. If you're over 500 employees, that's when you've got to do harder work, and that's when it's more of an obligation rather more mandatory. Yeah. So no, nothing else to add really.
Thank you. That was already wonderful, and I couldn't find something less than this bright, comments and advices. Thank you so much. A pleasure for me to be part of this panel.
Thank you. You've been a great moderator.
Thank you. Thank you. Maybe time for questions, final ones? Yeah, I know everyone wants to go back home. Any questions, any comments, any experience sharing, any comments on their legislation or takeaways? You want to go back home? Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you all. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Arif. Now we'll request you to please present them with mementos.
Sally, Islam. Heal. Actually,
ये तो आया नहीं शायद ये नहीं आया ना इसके जगह उसने
Thank you so much. I've got mine earlier this morning.
So we can have a group photo for this session.
Yeah, sure.
We can have a group photo for this session.
I don't know whether the light is still fine or not.